I'd like to remind you that for more Microsoft Webcast, you can go to microsoft.com/webcast. Thanks again for joining us for today's presentation, MSDN Webcast, a lap around HTML5 and Internet Explorer 9 for developers. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Pete LePage. Pete, you now have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you very much. My name is Pete LePage. I'm one of the product managers on the Internet Explorer team. And today I'm going to spend about the next hour or so taking you through some of the new HTML5 and other features, CSS3, and performance stuff in Internet Explorer 9. The plan for today is we're going to have a little look at some history and evolution, and then look at how Internet Explorer makes your experience fast, how the new browser layout is clean and provides quick, easy access to your sites, as well for developers, providing a really clean experience to the sites that you're building. And then finally, we'll talk about the interoperability stuff like HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. When the web first started back sort of in the early 2000 timeframe, a lot of the content on the web was really about consuming content. This is a view of the Microsoft website back in February of 2001. You can see it's mostly sort of, hey, I want to go get information, not a lot of opportunities to interact. As the web's progressed, we've moved into an opportunity where there's a lot more feedback and a lot more opportunity for you and for us to interact with websites, with Ajax and things like that. As we see the web moving forward, we see customers and developers asking for more interactivity and being able to take the experiences to much greater and deeper depth than they've ever been able to before. As we started working on Internet Explorer 9, we heard that, as developers, one of the big things that you wanted was transparency. And that's something we've really succeeded at, we think, in terms of providing the platform previews. The platform preview installs side by side with your daily browser, so you can test and see how the new features and the new platform works. We got rid of the browser frame, so that way you could really get an experience with just the platform. To give you an idea how successful this has been, we've had over 2.5 million downloads of the platform preview since March, over 20 million page views on the Internet Explorer test drive, and over 2,000 pieces of feedback have been submitted through the Microsoft Connect site. We're now on our 5th platform preview, and we're planning on keeping up that commitment of updating the platform previews every 8 weeks or so. We're excited that last week, on September 15th, we released the first beta of Internet Explorer 9. With the beta, that means that you can see the whole experience, not just the platform preview. So let's take a look at what we mean when we talk about fast with Internet Explorer 9. At the Professional Developer Conference last year, and again at Mix, we talked about how different sites use the different components of browsers in different ways. Looking at this chart, you can see a percentage of time spent in the different components of about 5 different news sites. With each of the sites, they spend a different amount of time in JavaScript or in rendering or in formatting. And really how your code is written and what you're doing makes a difference. So whether you have a really fast JavaScript engine or a really fast other components, all of the pieces matter. It's really important to make sure that you have a fast all-around system, not just a fast JavaScript engine. But we heard that you wanted a faster JavaScript engine in Internet Explorer 9, and we've done a lot of work in Internet Explorer 9 to actually get that. This is a chart showing the Webkit SunSpider JavaScript benchmark results. And to give you an idea of where we've come from, on the far left you can see Internet Explorer 9. That scale there on the left-hand side, that's in milliseconds. You can see Internet Explorer 9 beta and platform preview HTML5 is down in the same range as Chrome, Safari, Opera. We've really managed to bring that speed difference down to absolutely minuscule. In fact, the differences are in the range of about 50 to 25 milliseconds. It's pretty small. We've done that by building a brand new JavaScript engine in Internet Explorer 9. In the past, you'd pull down JavaScript, you'd start to interpret it, and run it through the interpreter. Well, unfortunately, because you're interpreting it, it's not quite as fast as we'd like. With Internet Explorer 9's new Chakra JavaScript engine, we now use your entire PC to actually make the experience better. As we start pulling down the code, in the background we interpret it just like we did before. But as soon as we have all of the code, we go ahead and use either one of the extra CPU cores in your system, or wait for some downtime in the CPU, and we compile that in the background to create native code. Because it's compiled in the background using multiple cores, you get a much faster experience, and the rendering and experience is much faster. I'm going to switch over to a video here for a second because I want to talk about and show you an example how you can see this. You can try this same demo for yourself because the video doesn't really do it justice, but you can try this by going to IE Test Drive and clicking on the spinning images. So as I bring up this video, I've recorded this morning, and you're going to have a look at Chrome running. Chrome's getting about 25 frames per second. This is just some plain simple HTML4 and CSS 2.1 and JavaScript. Firefox runs a little bit better. Oh, no, now it's down. Okay, so it's running at about 20 frames per second. What's happening here is this is a very tight JavaScript loop that is moving these images around. In Internet Explorer 9, because the JavaScript engine is much faster, as well as because it's using GPU acceleration, which we'll talk about in a moment, we're getting 60 frames per second. Again, you can try this today. You can go download the Internet Explorer 9 platform preview, or you can download the beta and give this a shot with, helps if I hit the right slides. And you can try this with the beta against any of the other browsers. So what's actually going on here? Let's take a look at this particular example. So in this particular example, you can see Internet Explorer 8 and Internet Explorer 9, what's going on. In the green, you can see that it's spending a lot of time doing download and compiling. That's the JavaScript is the green. The purple represents DOM manipulation. And then finally, the last part is the drawing on screen. Internet Explorer does that 9 does that whole thing in less than a 50th of a millisecond. So how does it do that? Well, Internet Explorer 9 uses the full power of your PC. When a lot of people think about the full power of their PC, one of the things we talk about is the JavaScript engine. Is the GPU. When people think of the GPU, they often think of gamers' GPUs and hardcore, intense GPUs. But that's not true. Pretty much every computer that shipped in the last 8 years has a GPU. Internet Explorer 9 runs graphics much better by using the GPU. Because the GPU does much better at graphics, we can achieve complex visual effects like alpha channel blending, smooth high-definition video, and take all of that work and offload it to the GPU. I mentioned that every computer in the last 8 years has shipped with a GPU. Well, we did a little bit of research using some of the Microsoft information that we have. And we were able to determine that most folks who are running Windows 7 or Windows Vista have a pretty decent GPU already available to them. In fact, most folks have something over a 4 on the Windows Experience Index. Hardware-accelerated text, video, and graphics means your websites perform like applications are installed directly on your Windows computer. Graphics are richer and much more responsive, and text is clearer and crisper, and high-definition video is smoother with the real-time performance you expect from your computer. Best of all, these changes are internal to the browser, and you get all of these advantages without having to change your code at all. The same markup, the same standard space markup, just works and uses full hardware acceleration. Because it's working without changing any of your code, that means whether you're using HTML5 or HTML4 or anything like that, your code is just going to run faster. But one of the things we heard from developers was they want ways to be able to see how much faster their applications run, or ways to be able to better metric their applications. So one of the things we've done is actually work with the W3C to create a new set of JavaScript profiling APIs so that you can instrument your code to better understand where the browser is spending most of its time. In addition to using these APIs when developing your site, you can use them to better understand how long it takes for a page to load on the user's page and send that back to the server in real time. In the code example I've got on screen, I'm using timing.navigationStart, which returns the number of seconds past January 1, 1970, UTC time, to determine the date function. I can then load that to a date time value. To get the end time, I use timing.loadEnd. By doing that, I can see what the total time it takes for my page to load, understand what's really going on. As I mentioned, we're working with the W3C on this, and this has already been implemented by Chrome in their Chromium browser as a first opportunity to sort of build out a interoperable implementation to better provide information for you. Internet Explorer 9 features a clean, streamlined interface. If you've downloaded it already or seen some screenshots, you've seen that. Similar to the Windows 7 user experience, with Internet Explorer 9, we took the opportunity to take a step back and ask our customers what they do, what they want to do when they boot up their PC and when they open up their browser. Over the course of the review, we discovered some things about how people use their computers and their browsers and the web. What surprised us was some of the features that we thought would be more frequently used were very low on the usage scale. One of the ones that surprised me personally the most was how infrequently people actually use their favorites bar. Personally, I use my favorites bar all the time. I've got probably 30 of my favorite links in there. I click on it probably 10 to 15 times a day. But less than 1/3 of Windows Internet Explorer users actually clicked on that. So when you think about users who are coming to your website, one of the things that's important to think about is that sometimes we're a little bit geeky and sort of technologically advanced over the average user. So we're doing things that some of our customers and some of your users who are surfing the web may not be doing. Another example, only less than 1/4 of people actually click the home button. So as you can see, Internet Explorer 9 has a much more streamlined interface, shrinking things down, providing the one box where you can type in your URL or a search query, making the home button smaller, making the back button a little bit bigger and easier for people to access. One of the other things that we thought about was how people surf the web and use the sites that they're used to using. If a shortcut in Outlook can be on the taskbar, why can't a shortcut to Hotmail or any of other sites? People have Zune on their taskbar. Why shouldn't they have their favorite music site? As we observed people in the lab and analyzed telemetry data, we saw two things happening. First, we observed that people who used the new taskbar in Windows 7 wanted to add sites to their taskbar to make access to workflow information more accessible. This was one of the most common requests for features. Second, we saw more and more time being spent in the browser. In fact, people spend about 57% of their time surfing the web. As we looked at how Internet Explorer 9 could make sites even better, we created the concept of pinning sites so that people could drag their websites to their Windows 7 taskbar and interact with them through jump lists, just like they can with Windows applications. With pinned sites, you can drag your favorite sites to the Windows taskbar to make them easy to access. Pinned sites commingle easily with the other native Windows 7 applications. Each site that's pinned has a taskbar preview and a jump list so that you can interact with these sites with ease and familiarity of other Windows applications. Jump lists are a quick way to get frequently visited websites without opening your browser first. Thumbnail preview controls available on Windows 7 taskbar provide quick controls to the sites that support them. Using thumbnail previews, you can also pause or rewind video if the site supports it, or provide a number of other features. You can also tear off tabs by dragging it away from the browser using arrow snap to position your browser on one side or the other. For developers like us, if you're interested in creating a pinned site, well, there's a couple of things to think about. One, you can do it today with no changes to your site. It uses the same markup, the same standards-based markup, without any special customization. If you want to enhance the pinned site experience by providing some custom information, adding the site programmatically or customizing the icon, defining jump lists, providing additional custom jump lists, you can do that with some simple meta tags or some simple JavaScript. But again, this requires no special work from you just to get pinned sites working. It uses the same standards-based markup to have a pinned site. To customize your pinned site, I mentioned that you just need some simple meta tags on your page. To add those, I've got 3 of them right there. You can have a look. Meta tag, name, application. That's the application name. So if you hover over and start the application, you see the application name. The tooltip is the tooltip that appears as you mouse over the application. And the start URL is the page that the application should go to on the first run experience. So again, using just the same markup, the existing site that you have today, you can customize your pinned site. If you want to do it programmatically, you can add it to the Start menu or check for the existence of this using the window.external.msIsSiteMode. That'll come back with a true or false value telling you whether whether the browser supports site mode or not. Then by calling window.external.msIsSiteMode open bracket close bracket as a function, you can tell if you're already in site mode or not. To add icon overlays or notifications to your browser application, this is something Facebook is doing today. If you go to Internet Explorer 9 and add Facebook and pin Facebook to your taskbar, Facebook tells you when you've got a new message or a new notification or new information showing up. To do that, again, just some simple JavaScript, window.external.msSiteMode set icon overlay, and you add the icon as well as a tooltip that you want to appear, and then call the MS Site Mode Clear icon overlay to clear that icon when you're ready to clear it. Adding jump lists is just some simple meta tags at the top of the page. And you add simply meta tag, name, MS application task, content, name, task 1. So that's the name of the task you want to appear. Providing the action URI, so the URL that the user will go to when the browser opens, and an icon. So in the little diagram that you see on screen, I might say world and provide a link to my world news or political news or that kind of thing. That basically gives you a quick, easy way that you can get people to your website and to your experience without having to send them through all sorts of, have them open their browser. Their applications start to feel native. You can have at maximum 5 task or jump lists on your application. You can get up to 12 of the customized ones. All right, so let's jump into interoperability. I think that's one of the coolest parts of Internet Explorer 9. Developers want to use the same HTML, the same script, the same markup across all browsers. And that's the goal of standards and interoperability. There's no need to write different code paths for different browsers. And that's the key goal for HTML5. We love HTML5 so much that we want it to work. That was a quote from Dean at Mix this year. And we really are committed to doing that. We want the same HTML, the same script, the same markup to just work across all browsers. And so in Internet Explorer 9, we're going to do for the rest of the web platform what we did for CSS 2.1 in Internet Explorer 8. And by that I mean that we built a really high-quality, standards-compliant implementation. Now, at the same time, we really want to be responsible about standards that are still emerging and standards that are in committee and the standards that are partially implemented, oftentimes in different ways across different browsers. And so to make decisions on this front, we started with data. So we set out to support every standard we saw in the real world. Internet Explorer 9 will support several standards that are not represented in this data. And we're going to do that to complete the scenario that HTML5 applications will need. If you have a look at this chart, we wrote a tool that went and navigated about 7,000 sites, and it reported on all the script activity that happened across these top 7,000 sites. The number one API used, index of, was used on 94% of sites. GetElementById, which, I'm sure probably everybody's using at this point, came in at number 13, 80%. We found that scripts change CSS opacity on elements a lot of the time. Now, the most broadly used APIs that are not in Internet Explorer 8 that you see on this chart are Add Event Listener at number 17. So it actually, or number 27, sorry. So it actually took us down quite a ways. Now, because we started from data, what developers like you really used, that was our starting point for what to support. But it's not enough just to make sure that we're implementing the features and specifications that you want. We're working directly with the W3C to make sure that the specifications are written strongly and clearly, and that there are very few ambiguities in the spec. If we can figure out the ambiguities before they're implemented, we can ensure that all browser vendors implement things in the same way. The Internet Explorer engineering team is well integrated into many of the different W3C groups, including the HTML5 working group, where Paul Cotton's one of the co-chairs. We're leading the HTML5 testing task force, editing the IndexedDB specification, and participating in the SVG working group, and many, many more. As you can see just from the one example that I've got on there from the HTML5 working group, there's a lot of different organizations who are actively involved in helping to work on this stuff to build a really great spec around HTML5. Working with the W3C also includes working on a testing task force so that we can make sure that there's an interoperable test suite that all browser vendors can agree upon. For example, we're on an SVG testing task force, as I mentioned, and the HTML testing task force, the accessibility testing task force, and many others. Because when we talk about the same markup, we mean one major thing. When you write your code and when you write your markup, we want it to work the same way across all browsers. The examples you see on screen show Internet Explorer 9 compared to all of the other browsers, rendering the border radius property. And they show you how the browsers render the dashes in a different way. You can try this by going to the IE test drive at ietestdrive.com and try it in all of the different browsers. In Internet Explorer 9, the dashes are the same width all the way around the border. They're dashed in the corners, and they look the same. Chrome's dashes seem a little bit random. They don't quite match up all the way around. Firefox, they're not rounded in the corners at all. The same markup means the code you write works the same way, the right way, in every browser. As we started with Internet Explorer 8, we're continuing to build the Internet Explorer Testing Center. It's an important way for us to work through and determine browser differences. We realized that there were, in the IE8 timeframe, we realized that there were less than 100 tests in the W3C CSS 2.1 test suite, nowhere near enough to validate a spec like CSS 2.1. Because of that, we worked with the W3C and we donated over 7,200 test cases to their test suite. We think it's vital to have a true interoperable test suite that all browser vendors can agree upon as a method to test and implement their HTML5 and other important web standards. That's why we've built the Internet Explorer 9 Test Center. We're doing the same thing that we did with IE8 for HTML5, SVG, CSS3, DOM, and JavaScript. The great thing is we're handing these tests over to the W3C. In fact, if you go look at the W3C blog, last week they posted a blog post about the new HTML5 test suite and how all the browser vendors are doing on it. So let's take a look at HTML5. HTML5 has turned into a bit of a word that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. Typically, people mean it to talk about it, and they mean that they're talking about the collection of new web specifications that enables next-generation web applications. It can include anything from the true W3C HTML5 specification, the CSS3 spec, the ECMAScript 5 spec, and many others. When looked at together, they provide developers like us with new support for rich graphics and media, new JavaScript and DOM functionalities, provide advanced functionality and programmability, and standardized behavior within the browser. The W3C HTML5 spec, which focuses on the needs of web application developers, takes HTML 4.01 to the next level, and it's still under development. Like I said earlier, we're working to find and resolve issues within the HTML5 spec to get it to the last call stage. In the meantime, it's really important to remember that the specification is under development and changes daily. I think the thing that amazes me the most is looking at the specification today, it's over 1,100 pages. If you look at the CSS4 spec, it's significantly less than that. One of the big reasons is as we build the specification within the W3C, we're being very conscious and aware of not only providing what the behavior should be when you do one thing, but also what the behavior should be if you do something incorrect. So the specification is still evolving, and is constantly changing. As we talk about GPU-powered HTML5, it means a lot of things. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list by any means, but it sort of gives you a example and some idea of some of the things that we're doing in Internet Explorer 9 and what GPU-powered HTML5 really means. All of these things, because of the new graphics support with GPU-accelerated markup, all of this runs faster in Internet Explorer 9 than ever before. Things like Canvas, SVG, CSS3 backgrounds and border module, the CSS3 Colors module, which allows you to specify RGBA or HSLA, as well as opacity, media queries, web fonts, hardware-accelerated video and audio. So let's take a dive in and have a look at some of these. I think Canvas is really fascinating, and it allows you to do a lot of really neat stuff that you've never been able to do before. The Canvas element is part of the HTML5 spec and allows you to create dynamic, scriptable renderings of 2D graphics. The Canvas element in your HTML defines the drawing area, and then through JavaScript, you can get a 2D context and begin dynamically drawing within that region. If you remember using Logo many, many years ago as one of maybe your first programming languages, it's very similar to Logo in terms of you can place a pen on a page and draw around. You can draw elements, gradients, and plenty more. Much like SVG, you can draw shapes, including rasterized images, videos, and other objects. The code on screen gives you an example of how you do that. Canvas, define a width and a height. The content that goes between the Canvas open and close element is only drawn or displayed on the screen if your browser doesn't support Canvas. So in that example, you might want to put a flash or a Silverlight fallback in there so that you do still provide an experience for people who don't have a browser that support Canvas. Then to access the Canvas element through JavaScript, document.getElementById and grab the element by its ID. So in my case, I used my Canvas. And you need to get the 2D context. From there, I said fill style, and I chose RGBA, same as the CSS3 Colors module. We'll talk about that in a sec. But you can specify what color you want. In this case, I just chose red. And I said I wanted to draw a rectangle, so fill rectangle, 30, 30, 50, 50. And the 30, 30, 50, 50 is the X and Y axis within the Canvas context. And 50, 50 is the size of the rectangle that I want to draw. So a quick, easy Canvas sample. You can check out some more Canvas samples on the IE Test Drive site at ietestdrive.com and go have a look at Canvas Pad or Fish Tank. A couple other neat ones, Mr. Potato Gun, Asteroid Belt, or Deep Zoom. SVG is another cool new feature in Internet Explorer 9. And SVG allows you to draw vector graphics using XML. With Canvas, you would draw your items on screen using JavaScript. That meant that as soon as it was drawn on screen, the browser didn't remember it anymore. So there was no easy way that through you could go and change those without erasing and redrawing. With SVG, it's a vector-based image that is composed of shapes instead of pixels. That means that you can zoom in really quite well without having to lose any quality because you're drawing with shapes instead of pixels. We're implementing the SVG 1.1 second edition full spec. Now that's a bit of a mouthful, but that gives you an idea of the full implementation that we're doing in Internet Explorer 9. Most of the other browsers are only doing part or certain chunks of the spec. Because the SVG is drawn in line with your HTML, you'll notice on the screen I've got SVG width and height and the XML namespace, and then I have just two rectangles. Now again, this is just a super simple example, but it gives you an idea of what you can do. Because those elements are directly in the DOM, you can script them and change them in any way you want. You can add an ID to those rectangles, and through JavaScript, grab that element and make any kind of changes to it that you want. A couple of neat examples that you can check out on the IE Test Drive site. Check out the SVGoids or real-world data and diagrams. SVG video, or sorry, HTML5 video is, I think, one of my other favorite things. Video on the web is something that you're seeing a lot more of now. Today, to put video on the web, for the most part, you need to use Silverlight or Flash or something like that. With HTML5 video, you can add MPEG-4 or H.264 video on your page just like you would do with a simple image tag. In fact, the context is very similar. You add a video tag, you specify the source, video.mp4 or whatever your source is. Optionally, you can apply an ID, a width, and a height. The comments in between the video open and close tags are only shown when the browser doesn't support video. You can embed Flash or Silverlight. HTML5 introduces a new concept for adding attributes, and that's something called Boolean attributes. With Boolean attributes, they are there and considered to be on if the attribute is there. It doesn't matter what the value is set at. We'll have a look at that in a sec, but if you want to have a quick peek at some neat examples of HTML5 video in action, I'd suggest you check out the beauty of the website and check out the IMDb high-def video example. It's a really neat example of how you can supply HD video on your page, providing great interactivity with the users, being able to provide information on screen, and a lot of other really cool things. With the HTML5 audio tag, it supports the industry standard MP3 and AAC audio codecs. And again, it's fully scriptable through the DOM. I mentioned earlier the concept of Boolean attributes. If you have a look at the audio, source equals audio.mp3, ID audio tag, and then there's the autoplay and controls. By placing those attributes in the element, it means that they're set to true. You could say autoplay equals true. You could say autoplay equals autoplay. You could say autoplay equals false. And the fact that autoplay is in there as an attribute tells the browser, as part of HTML5, according to the spec, tells the browser that it should go ahead and consider autoplay on. With both video and the audio tag, you can support multiple source files. So with Internet Explorer 9, we support MPEG-4 and H.264 out of the box. And we've said if the user has the WebM video codec installed, that will also be supported. What you can do to get that is inside the element, right along here where I've highlighted, you can add additional source attributes so that you can actually go in and apply additional source files so that you could have the H.264 video codec, the H.264 video, you could supply a WebM encoded video, and you could support, add an OGG encoded video. WOFF Fonts is from CSS3 is another new feature of Internet Explorer 9. We're no longer, as designers and developers, limited to supporting the same web-safe font list that we used to be limited to. The web open font format allows you to package and deliver fonts as needed per site, so that you can actually go and say, hey, I want to provide a particular font and provide that font file. The browser will download the font and provide that particular font to the user, making sure that they get that experience that has the great design and typography that you want. To do it, all you have to do is you build the WOFF font, and there are several tools available online to do that, and then add in your style or in your CSS style sheet at font face, specify the font name that you want to use, and a source URL that specifies the font file. Then on your page, all you have to do is use font size, the font name, and in this particular case, I've used a fallback font. There's a really great example of this on the Beauty of the website. If you go to Experience and you check out the website that was built by Jason Santamaria of List Apart fame, he and a couple other folks built a really beautiful website that uses pure fonts to build up a really great experience. CSS3 Media Queries is another new feature of Internet Explorer 9, and it allows you to selectively style pages based on properties of the media or of the experience that the user is coming in on. In the example I've got on screen, I've said I've provided a style sheet called mobile.css that is available for the screen and a max width of 480 pixels. I then have a netbook CSS sheet that is for screen widths that are between 481 pixels and 1024. And finally, a laptop CSS style sheet that's for anything wider than 1025 pixels. That allows you to write your markup once and provide a different style sheet for different browsers and different size screens. That way, if you've got a news site, you can provide a great experience on a mobile device without having to rewrite and recode your entire website for a different experience. The CSS3 Colors module is something that is kind of fascinating. Not only do we support RGBA now, which allows you to specify the red, green, blue, and alpha transparency channel, which alpha transparency allows you to specify how transparent or opaque something is. The value for that is anywhere between 0 and 1, with 0 being completely translucent, so you can see through it completely. In fact, it's invisible, and 1 being completely visible. You'll notice in the example I've got on screen, this bottom half is set as 0.5, which means that you can kind of see through this gray or this darker box down here at the bottom. One of the other things is HSLA colors. For those of you who have been around computers for a while and sort of grew up with the RGBA color model, that makes a lot of sense to you if you grew up with it. But many folks who come from the design industry understand the HSLA color model much more intricately. HSLA lets you specify the hue, saturation, lightness, and alpha transparency. The hue is represented as a color wheel, for example, and the value is anywhere between 0 and 360. 0 or 360 is red. At about a third of the way through the circle, at 120, is green. At 240 is blue. So for example, purple would be 300. It's right between the red and the blue. Saturation represents how strong the color is, and lightness defines how bright the color is. We're at 0%, it's black, and 100%, it's pure white. At 50%, the color is at its normal color. The backgrounds and borders is another thing that's now in Internet Explorer 9. Like I said, I'm going to cover just a bunch of these just because of time. I won't get a chance to go through everything. But this is just giving you a good sort of taste for what we're supporting. The CSS backgrounds and borders allow you to have rounded corners, the border radius, multiple backgrounds per element, and the CSS border shadow property on block elements. With the border radius, you can specify the 4 corners, and each corner, think about that as the radius of the circle. So in the particular example you're seeing on screen, my top left corner is 152 pixels. My top right corner is set at 304 pixels. Bottom right is at 228. Bottom left is at 152. You can specify those each at a different value, or you could just simply say border radius, 50 pixels, semicolon, and that will set all of the corners at the same value. We've done a lot in our DOM and JavaScript support. We now have full DOM level 2 and level 3 event support. For those of you who are kind of wondering, add event listener, absolutely supported now. Another one is DOM content loaded. Today, if you want to know when all of the elements have finished loading, the only thing you can really wait for is the load event to fire. Unfortunately, the load event doesn't fire until you've actually loaded not only the whole DOM, but you've downloaded all of the pages that or pages and elements like images or JavaScript files or anything else on the page. With DOM content loaded, that event fires as soon as your page has all of the DOM loaded, even if the images aren't loaded or certain CSS files aren't loaded yet. We've added a whole bunch of new ECMAScript 5 features. DOM traversal and range from the HTML5 spec. DOM style, which allows you to actually go in and get the style in a way that is the same markup, so that it works the same in Internet Explorer 9 as it does in Chrome or Firefox, Safari, or Opera. We've added XHTML support and updated the HTML5 parser to properly handle the different types of parsing things that could happen. Get computed style, get selection, get elements by class name is all now supported. You can check out a whole bunch of examples on the test drive site, ietestdrive.com. There's a particular sample for get elements by class name, get computed style. You can check out the ECMAScript 5 array elements that are now available. There's a DOM traversal demo, DOM content loaded demo, and plenty more. And as developers, one of the things that we find ourselves often doing is having to go in and sort of debug and step into our code to find out what's happening. Well, in Internet Explorer 8, we created and built into the developer, or into Internet Explorer, the F12 Developer Tools. With the F12 Developer Tools, they're built in, they come by default. You don't have to go and download anything, you don't have to do anything to get them. Just by hitting F12 in Internet Explorer 9 or in Internet Explorer 8, you bring up a full set of very powerful debugging tools that gives you an ability to be able to see your DOM, see and edit the CSS, There's a console tab that lets you see what's going on so that you can provide console.log and write events. You can go in and debug your script, complete with all of the stuff you'd expect, including watches, breakpoints, and more. You can edit your HTML live on the page or your CSS. You can actually go in and change properties and see what happens in real time so that you understand what's going on your page or understand why something is coming in the way it's coming in. In Internet Explorer 9, we introduced a new feature, the Network Inspection tab. If you've played with Fiddler, the tool for watching what's going on your network stack, you'll find this tool to be somewhat familiar. If you haven't played with Fiddler, it's super easy to use and really powerful. By being built into Internet Explorer, it's no longer living as a proxy, and it means it's sitting right on your network stack, so you can see every network request that goes across. You can see information about the request that was sent out, the response that was sent back, and the details of the response. And you can actually go in and debug and understand really what's going on. Some of the other things that I think are pretty neat are an ability to be able to go in and change the user agent string at the snap of your fingers. Just hitting F12 to bring up the developer tools, clicking on tools, and then change user agent string, you can actually change your user agent string to Internet Explorer 8, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, or even specify your own user agent string depending on what you need to do. I mentioned before, because of the SVG support, you can actually go in and the SVG elements become elements within the DOM. Well, because they're elements in the DOM, you can see them in the HTML tab. And as you expand out the DOM, you can see those elements, and you can change those properties on the element just like you would on any other HTML element. It's pretty slick. There's a really great couple of articles on Script Junkies about the IE8 developer tools. And you can look for more stuff about the IE9 developer tools coming soon. But I encourage you to try them today. Just install either the platform preview or install Internet Explorer 9 and hit F12. So as you can see, Internet Explorer 9, we've done a lot to make your experience as a developer much better and make the experience for users who are browsing the web much better. We've made it all around fast by using the full power of your PC to provide GPU-powered HTML5 and platform enhancements, including the Chakra JavaScript engine. We've cleaned up the user interface to make it more streamlined and speedier so that it puts the focus on the sites that you build or the sites that you visit rather than on the browser. And we've spent a lot of time making sure that our implementation of HTML5, CSS3 is truly interoperable so that the standards-based code that you write and this works across all browsers. The same markup just works. Today, Internet Explorer 9 beta is available. We encourage you to go and migrate your applications off Internet Explorer 6 if they're already there. We want IE6 users to move to IE8 or IE7 as soon as they can. If you're building sites today, develop for standards first, and then go back and make sure that you've got backwards compatibility. But developing for standards first will make your life much easier. You can download and install the Internet Explorer 9 beta and go and test your sites. If you've got a public-facing site, make sure you just give it a quick shot. Make sure things work. If things work or look a little different, make sure you're sending Internet Explorer 9 the same markup that you would send to other browsers like Chrome, Firefox, or Safari. You'll probably find by doing that, your application will just work like you expect it to. You can learn more at http://msdn.com/IE, and you can download the beta at http://beautyoftheweb web.com. So with that, I'm going to open up to questions, and I'll take some of the questions that are outstanding. And I'm going to put up this resources slide, and then you can have a look. So resources, beautyoftheweb.com, to download Internet Explorer 9 and see the beauty of the web and see what developers have built. You can get started building on Internet Explorer 9 by checking out the Developer Center at msdn.com/IE. See some of the interactive demos and what's going on at ietestdrive.com. And you can share your feedback and provide resources at connect.microsoft.com. So with that, I will pop it over to some questions, and we'll go from there. So I've got a couple questions here. Let me just... So the first question I've got is, can audio and video tags have custom implementations like Flash players for Flash and Silverlight do? Yeah, they absolutely can. You can use the default controls that are built into the browser. They look a little bit different in each browser, or you can build your own custom controls and script the audio and video tags just like you would expect to be able to. I've seen a really neat implementation being done by through jQuery that's been pretty slick. Let me just clear that. All right, so the next question. Is IE9 going to have speed dial as a browser feature built into IE9 and not have to get add-ons? I'm not sure what you mean by speed dial, so I'm going to just clear this question. If you maybe ask again, I'll come back to that. Somebody asked, did I say HTTP whack? Yes, I did. That was HTTP //. Sorry if I call it whack. Next question. Inner HTML is still very slow compared to Firefox, Chrome, and Opera. Are you going to improve the performance of Inner HTML? I have several scenarios where it takes several minutes for content to render, and it takes place split seconds in other browsers. Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of performance enhancements still coming. If you've got specific examples where it's still really slow, I encourage you to go to connect.microsoft.com and submit feedback there. It's especially useful if you can provide specific examples and maybe some code samples so that we can see what you're doing and understand what's going on to provide a better example and understand what's going on. Somebody just asked about dates for when the final version is out. And right now, I don't have an answer to that. We want to make sure that with Internet Explorer 9, we ship a browser that's really built on quality. You can see in some of the stuff that I talked about in terms of making sure that we've got a really rock-solid implementation of HTML5, CSS3, and other important web standards. And to do that, we want to make sure that we do it right. And that's going to take however long it takes. So hopefully that we'll see it soon, but we'll see how that goes. All right, I'm going to take one last question, and then I encourage you to keep an eye on the IA blog at blogs.msdn.com/IE, as well as the IE Developer Center. And the final question is, can you install Internet Explorer 9 on Windows 7 without and have it install side by side with Internet Explorer 8? Installing IE9 will override and install IE9 on your machine. You won't have IE8. If you don't want to lose your IE8 installation because you need it for your corporate intranet or anything like that, we encourage you to go and install the Platform Preview. Platform Preview 5 was released on Wednesday at the same time as the beta, so you can get that. You can install it side by side with Internet Explorer 8, and you can see the same thing. You unfortunately won't get some of the browser frame experiences, like the ability to be able to pin sites or the use of the one box, but you will be able to get the full platform experience. And like I said, we're going to keep updating those every about 8 weeks, so that way you can see as we fix bugs and improve performance, you get a much better experience. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor back over and say thank you very much and encourage you to check out the sites that I mentioned, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to remind everyone that you may print a PDF of the slides by clicking Control-P. You can either print or save those slides locally for your convenience. Handouts are also available by clicking the icon shaped like 3 white sheets of paper in the upper right corner of your screen. You should all be seeing a survey now in your slide area. If you could take a moment to fill it out before you log off, we do appreciate any feedback you leave for us. All you need to do is follow one of the 2 links provided to complete the evaluation. And with that, I'd like to extend a special thanks to Pete LePage for today's presentation. Thank you all for joining us. You may now disconnect from the audio portion of today's conference.